This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor Jon Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
It's the holiday season. Your girls are getting older.
I know.
It's like such a fun time of year, but when you do see your kids start getting older around the holidays, you're kind of bummed out a little bit.
I know when they don't want toys, they want like lip gloss. I don't know. It's just a little less exciting for me. It's okay. I will have to learn to cope with this. And I've heard this for the last, I've had children for almost 16 years.
Yeah.
For 16 years, I've heard this from my clients. They're like, dude, they grow up so fast. And I was like, it did not feel like that. And now I look at it and my youngest is actually 11. I think yesterday I said
she just
10.
turn 11? You did? I think
she did on November 25th.
Okay.
So
that's right.
She's 11.
I forgot you guys have the same birthday. Do you have the same birthday? Is your November 25th your
3 days
birthday?
off.
Okay,
3 days off.
Got it.
Yeah. So, but we both have the birthdays in the same week as Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Almost always. And so we call it Gobble Week. And it allows us to, get away and let someone else do the cooking and cleaning for us.
I love it. That sounds like a great way to pass the holiday time to me, and I'm sure most folks listening to us on HAS today.
I know, but unfortunately we don't play Jenga or Uno Attack anymore. We're watching them apply mascara and eyeliner, which is great, right? Because I love my kids.
Yeah.
But it's just different when they get a little older.
It is. But I will say they come back around, and you get to a point where at 18, 19, 20, I started being back interested in Lego kits again. So you never know. Sure. Don't give up on them yet, John. Don't give up on him yet. Hey, let's flip the tone and talk about a different anniversary other than the birthdays you and your beautiful daughter recently celebrated. We also recently passed the 96th anniversary of the 1929 stock market crash that, of course, we all know helped usher in the Great Depression. It was a trying time, to say the very least, for our country. So CNBC and New York Times financial reporter Andrew Ross Sorkin, he's come out with a new book about that time. It's actually titled 1929. He was on 60 Minutes talking about how the market run-up that we've seen lately actually mirrors the overpriced bubble of 1929. Here's some of what he was saying.
I would argue to you that the economy is being propped up almost artificially by the artificial intelligence boom. There are hundreds of billions of dollars that are being invested today in artificial intelligence. This is either a gold rush or a sugar rush, and we probably won't know for a couple of years which one it is. We will have a crash. I just can't tell you when, and I can't tell you how deep. But I can assure you, unfortunately, I wish I wasn't saying this, we will have a crash.
Well,
that sounds fairly ominous, doesn't it?
Isn't that profound? We'll have a crash.
Well, I mean, and I think that if you actually look at the market and if you look at how it's been over all periods of time, it's always going to crash. And then hopefully, and at least historically, it's always recovered. But here's the thing we have to just understand. When a guy who is on CNBC daily, and he just spent a decade studying 1929,
right?
When he says we will,
his head's in a certain place, isn't it? Yeah.
He says we will have a crash. Well, when that happens, it starts to get people's attention, but not for not good reasons, right? So I've been talking about this on this show for the last 2 or 3 years. Last two specifically, 23 and 24. When you look at 2022, because most people say, well, hold on, John, we had a downturn. We had a down year in 2022. That is 100% accurate. But let's talk about why that downturn happened. In 2022, we actually had just come off the heels of COVID. We had finally reopened. And the amazing thing is we had the market fall apart in 2020 only to get fully recovered within 3 months. And in 2022, something very different happened. It was less of a market move and more of an interest rate move. That is the most important thing to understand. In 2022, the Fed went from almost zero interest rates at the literally almost zero to 5%. By the end of, by the very beginning of 2023. And when that happens, it destroyed the bond market. Bonds were down as much as equities in 2022.
Right.
On top of that, it was very taxing on a lot of the banking institutions and financials. So when those things happened and we realized, oh my gosh, some of these things that were really good in COVID may not be all that great now or not as good as other things. So that started a little bit of what they call trend rotation and or sector rotation. So those are the reasons why 2022 was down. It was not because we were in a depressionary situation, or it was not because the market was completely overinflated.
Yeah.
Now, This is what I've been saying for the past 2 years. In the last 2 years, the market has gotten unbelievably bubblicious.
Right.
We look at everything as an AI component. Everyone is applying AI to everything. Hey, there's AI in how my dog food's made. Hey, there's AI in how my dog gets fed. There's AI in my dog. That's right. We just plug him in every night.
That's real.
That's
though.
right.
They put it. They chip your pets now.
See my point? So they have AI doing everything, and it reminds me of petrocks.com. Everything.com. Now everything is .ai, except there's just not the dot.
Right.
So what we're seeing, and this is what Sorkin was talking about. He was talking about, hey, we just have hundreds of billions, and I'll tell you, it's not hundreds of billions, it's trillions and trillions worldwide. Having just come back from a Middle East investment summit, I will tell you right now, the rest of the world is trying to play catch up with the United States, and they are pumping trillions of dollars into artificial intelligence. Now, the question that Sorkin asked was, hey, is this correct? Or is this a bubble that's getting ready to pop once the next shoe drops? Now, no one knows that. Right. But I do know one thing. If you look at the computing requirements, if you look at the computing energy requirements for AI, there is not enough money on this planet to create the data centers and the energy suck from all these data centers to have all the AI and everything. So when you think about that, just very legitimately for a minute, it's no different when Elon Musk was talking about Tesla vehicles. And all of a sudden, if more than 25% of Americans drove electric vehicles, there would not be enough energy to plug them in each night. Our grids are too archaic. And what started happening? Tesla stock started to change. Electric cars started to change. And all of a sudden now, not everyone wants to buy an electric car. I think that there could be something similar to be saying about this AI revolution, right? So if you have 27 different things that can all tell you exactly how to cook scrambled eggs and exactly how to tie your shoes and explain to a teenager, blah, 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 whatever, that's great. But at what point is it overlap or too much, and how many hundreds of billions of dollars were spent on that? So the bubble, I feel, is very real. But being early is just like being wrong. Okay. And if you decided that you were going to sidestep AI, you may lose out on 20 or 30% of gains. No one knows. Yeah. But the truth is that things are very expensive, and AI does appear a little bubblicious. Okay. So that doesn't mean change your investment tolerances. It doesn't mean any of that, but it does say, hey, do you own some of these things that have gone through the roof that have invested in AI? Because if you have, consider, is it tax favorable to maybe do some reshuffling here right at the end of the year? Is it potentially tax favorable for that thing to happen? Because that could be a different impetus on, should you shuffle up your portfolio, or should you take some profits, or should you eliminate some losses? Those are important things. In our firm, that's what we do all the time. Yeah. It's never do we think that there's going to be a downturn that we make any moves. What we say is, we've already done a stress test. We know what would happen if the market goes down 15% for that client. What if it goes down 25? What if all heck breaks loose and the market does go down 50%? Would that even impact that client? Do they have market-based investments that aren't protected, or they aren't hedged, or they don't have derivatives or stop losses on them? Some of our clients, they have all those things in place. They don't have to worry about a market downturn. Okay. Some of them own assets that can grow, but if the market takes an absolute, it just goes right into the dumpster, they may not lose a penny. So those things can be attractive. And the question is, are those things that need to be in someone's portfolio? Are they already there? Is the client understand how they operate? Because if we do have a major downturn, people are going to go, oh my gosh, what do I even own? How much am I down? And they panic, and that causes really poor decision making. But if you have that conversation before it goes down, should you reposition now? Should you reposition later? Do you want to put things already in place? So when the downturn happens, not if, but when, as Aaron talks about, are we already prepared so that we know the worst case scenario? See, guys, that is what I think to be the most powerful. If you know that when things hit the fan, that not only you're already prepared, it's automated. It automatically does the portion that we would freak out about without any emotion. Basically very logical. It sidesteps harm's way. It gets rid of the most aggressive things, or it hedges them, and then looks for opportunities down the road. That is genius. And that is what, frankly, and oddly enough, AI can do today for all of our portfolios. All of the big firms have access to it. Yeah. And the best advisors utilize it correctly, not to pick stocks, right, but how to protect the gains that we have when we actually have them. Those are important things to actually consider.
Meanwhile, the holiday frenzy, we are in the full throes of it.
Fa la 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 la, right?
That.
That and a lot more of it. I remember thinking, it was probably 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. One of the stations around here plays Christmas music starting, I think, like November 1.
Yeah.
And I found it like in the second week. I'm like, this is great. Now I want them to put Mariah Carey back on ice. I know. It's
freeze
the
her
truth.
back up.
I hate.
She thaws every year on November 1st.
Right.
It's time to
I don't
freeze
know
her
if they
back
just
up.
put her in a cryogenic freeze locker or whatever, but I'm ready for her to go right back in. So my kids, I've got a 15-year-old who's, close, very, very close to going on 23.
That's it.
And then a 10-year-old who amazingly is trying to go on 23 like big sister.
No,
so
don't.
I know I'm trying everything I can, but like this was like one of the first year where, I'm looking at the letters to Santa and all that stuff. And there's really not that many toys, Heather.
Yeah.
There's not that many toys.
There's
and I was like,
shift.
oh my gosh, whoa. Yeah.
That happens when it's like, it's not as fun even for mom and dad on Christmas morning. You're like,
right.
Who wants a tablet? Boring, yawn.
Exactly. It's like, and how much more can we give to Sephora and Ulta?
Yeah.
And yet all these things, I'm like, do you even know what those things do? And whether they do or don't, it's not as fun to open up as, the bike or the skateboard or the Xbox or the whatever it is, something that you can be like, oh yeah, let's make sure we get the batteries. Let's fire this thing up and we can have some family fun.
Toys.
Unless I want a makeover. I don't see.
That sounds like a fun Facebook
My
post.
wife says I could use one. I know. But unless I want to make over, I don't know exactly what we're going to be playing with under the tree this year. But it's okay. It's okay.
Good news for any parent who has gone through this phase of life. The pendulum swings back around because you get to a point where you've earned, you've saved, you've sacrificed. Now you're going to get to retirement and you get to buy yourself the toys because the kids are out the house.
Yes.
It's time for mama and papa to buy themselves some toys. Maybe that convertible that you have always wanted. Maybe the boat, the RV, the mountain house.
Yes.
Mom and dad, toy time is coming, and it's called retirement.
Yes. I still don't have a boat, Heather. I remind myself that every single year.
We all got to have goals, John.
I mean, I'm just saying. And of course, everyone I talk to says, dude, you know about boats. I'm like, I do know about boats. I know, but I can't say that firsthand.
I want to say it firsthand.
Because I can't say it firsthand. I only have half of it. It's like reading a book, but you didn't live the life.
Let me learn my own lesson about boat purchasing and then selling. Let me learn my lesson about the best day and the second best day of a boat owner's life.
That's right.
Let's
talk about a floating money pit that assume and you hope and assume that it will float. But, oh my God. We can only hope.
Remind me one day to tell you about my dad's sailboat that's at the bottom of a lake. That's a whole nother radio show. We don't have enough time.
We'll do that.
We don't have enough time. Let's talk about focusing on the goals, the things we want to do for ourselves in retirement and how to achieve those goals, because there are a lot of studies. We've talked about these before here on the radio program about when people hope to retire versus when they actually do retire.
Yeah.
This is the Wall Street Journal's Ann Tergeson recently on Morningstar.
And over time, I just started noticing like everybody says they want to retire later than they do on average. People want to retire at, say, 65, 66, but they really are retiring more like 63. And often, people speak to these unexpected things that happen, whether it's layoffs, often it's health issues, whether it's their own health or somebody else's health, and they need to provide caregiving. So I think that's just a very, very persistent, common trend over time.
I think that it's important to talk about how we take more of the control back, though, John. And even if stuff comes our way, a health issue, a job loss, we have the plan in place so that we're still, in some way, shape, or form, retiring on our own terms.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I talk to people about this all the time.
Sure.
And I thought it was interesting. Anne brought up some statistics that I have seen, but she did it in a good way. So, when we think about it, a lot of us are like, hey, listen, I don't hate my job. I can do this for a little bit longer. I'm 61 now, maybe 65, 66, 67. And because of health insurance, at least 65. This is what I hear all the time. At least 65 so I can get on Medicare. And then we'll see after that, right? So all these things happen. These are the ideas. These are the things that when we're creating a plan, this is kind of what we start with. But then I always say, but what if the numbers suggest that you could retire at 62 or 63? Yes, we would have to come potentially out of pocket and pay for some health insurance, but could you get more quality of life in retirement if you retire earlier, right? And some that throws off all the time. But that's why we do it. We don't know, because I do it as if we have control. We have enough money so we can decide if we want to do that. But what we find, and what Ann just said, and this is what I find so interesting, more than half, like 60% of people retire earlier than they originally planned. And it's not always their choice.
Right.
They either have health concerns, or they have a family member that they have to be, giving care to, or frankly, they get downsized, right-sized, reshuffled in the deck, and maybe they don't like their job as much. But in the planning process, we always think it's more important for us to think of the things that we can control. So we always look at retiring earlier as it's a choice, right? So in the event, we've already done the math. We've already seen, if we do go earlier, what concessions are we going to have to make, or what different strategies do we have to put in place to ensure that our income lasts for longer? Because think about it, Heather, if you thought you were going to retire at 67 and instead you retire at 63, that's 4 years. That's 4 of your best earning years that you're not going to be saving as much money. On top of that, it compounds, because that's 4 more years that you may need to pull $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 from that portfolio that you thought was going to have additions. It's going to have subtractions. That can be devastating if it's not planned for. But we look at those numbers because, think about it like this, guys. If you go to the airport and all of a sudden on the board, it says that your flight is leaving at 7:10 p.m., no problems. But if you retire early, it's like thinking that your flight leaves at 7:10, but really it's leaving at 5:45 p.m., whether you're ready or not. That's exactly what's happening. And that changes everything, right? And it is just as chaotic. Are our bags going to get there? And the way I look at that is your income going to be there for as long as you need it? The 2 worst things that can happen is that we retire early, and that puts an undue stress on our portfolio. And at the same time, we are blessed with good fortune to last a lot longer in retirement. So it's fabulous. We live to be 95. And let's assume that we are healthy and we are active and we're loving it. It is a wonderful life. But those early years of retirement early may not allow the income to persist the way we want. So those are the things that we have to plan for. So retiring early does not have to be devastating, but by all means, understand it can be devastating if it's not planned for, right? So there's a lot of plans that I've seen when people come in and they've made these plans and they have no idea where the income is actually going to come from. They hear that, John, my guy says I'll take 3.5% out a year, 4% a year. Great. But what assets are spinning off that income for you? I mean, do you have a pension? Well, no, I wish I had a pension. I don't have one of those. Oh, okay. So do you have an annuity? No, I don't really like annuities. Okay. Do you have Airbnbs that you have consistent rental history? Do you own a lot of property that spins off income? Do you have private equity ownership of businesses that pay you an income? They're like, no, none of those. I'm like, well, then guys, where's the income going to come from? And here's what they often say. Well, John, we were just going to, just go ahead and pick a little bit. We get this big old pile of money. We were just going to pick at it. Just take 3 or 4% a year. What's wrong with that? Well, guys, everything is wrong with that. No joke. Everything is wrong with that strategy. That is not a strategy. That is a prayer. That is a hope and a dream. And that is how people run out of money. What you want to plan for is where that income is going to come from and how is it going to be taxed? Is it in your taxable bucket? Is it in your tax deferred bucket, your tax free bucket? Those things matter for living in retirement. It's so different. No one ever told us in the beginning that saving all that money was the easy part. It's how we distribute it so that we can live ourselves the way we want to in retirement for as long as we last. And hopefully there's a few bucks left over for the kids and grandkids, hopefully. But the main thing is that it is a new invention, which is retirement. It used to be only a handful of years ago. Right. By the time that you retired, you hoped you were still alive. You didn't kick off at the job site. And that still unfortunately does happen. But a lot of people, you retired at 65 and your life expectancy was only 67. There was only 2 years your money had to last. Now, if we retire early, as Ann is saying, and we're putting a lot of undue stress on our portfolio, at the same time, we last into our 90s. Why? Artificial intelligence, new things that we're coming up with healthcare, all these medical inventions. Heck, I can take a shot and lose 50 pounds in a year now. I mean, how amazing is that? Mm-hmm. And these things will probably enhance our lives and the quality of our lives. Those are ways that we benefit our lives, but it has costs. So the biggest thing to understand is if you do not know exactly what part of your portfolio will be used to spin off your income, unfortunately, guys, that's a problem. It's a huge error sign. It's like when you see that board that says your plane is boarding in 10 minutes and you thought you had 2 hours. guys, you're going to have to go ahead and do the hard work now. Maybe it means you're running down to make sure you catch that plane. But in this situation, you need to run down and find and do the math to make sure that you understand not only if you retire at the age you think, but what if you go earlier? What concessions are you going to have to make? Are you going to have a part-time job? Or you have to sell some of that side property? Do you need to downsize your house sooner? Because if we plan for it, we can prepare for it. If we don't prepare for it, then there may be no chance of it working out. So Ann made an interesting point, and I think it's very important. If you do not know where your income will come from in retirement, guys, that is the most important part to plan for.
So there is a gentleman. He's a financial coach of sorts. He is a financial coach. He has the name Stephen Chen. He was on the website GoBankingRates.com talking to them about, in his career, the biggest mistake that he sees people make. And the tragedy is, again, so many of us want to do well, but so many of us do mistakes accidentally. That's the saddest part to me. So what he sees, John, is that it's not having a spending plan, but not just that monthly number. It's also where the money comes from. That's what he sees people mess up the most. Do you agree with that?
100%. So if you think about it, and most people are not avid mountain climbers, if you will, but I have had the opportunity to talk to many people that are like world champion mountain climbers. I don't know why. It's just one of those endurance sports. And these guys that do it well, like they have a lot to say. And maybe it's just because they have so many hours to postulate on life's greatest philosophies when they're going up and down a mountain. But one of the things that I laugh about is because they say, oh, no. You have to have two completely different guides. John, there's the guide that gets you to plan for it all to get up the mountain. Mm-hmm. And then there's the second guide, the guide that teaches you how, now that you've hit the summit, how do you come down without dying? Because at that point in time, you've done a really hard job. I mean, like you went to the very top, you didn't die yet. You're not, you could be injured, but the main thing is that we got to make sure that you can get down after you're tired because you did that climb up, right? And it's a completely different skill set. So what Chen is talking about here, I think is a lot like that second guide. Many of us, we have our advisors or we've done it on our own and we've put the money into the 401k. We've diversified. We don't panic sell. Those are all the things we're told to do, right?
Right.
And we hold on to the money and we get to that point and we'll retire. But here's the thing. Not only how much money should we pull out, the number is not necessarily as important as what sources are we using to create the income in the first place, right?
Okay.
Because it's very easy to think about it. When you're working, we get a paycheck, or if you own your own business, you have profits, from your revenues. That is not hard. But when we retire, we technically have to have an asset to spin off money for us. We may be able to rely on Social Security, or maybe we have an annuity or a pension, which is great. But then the rest of those dollars, they got to come from something. And if the market tanks, goes down 30, 40, 50%, we thought we were going to pull $100 out of an account, but now that account has only got half. Should we only pull $50 out? Right? That's the issue. And so what Chen is talking about is, hey, people have saved a ton of money. You've done a lot of the hard work, but you have to navigate that descent down the mountain, or in this case, that income need, that withdrawal sequence that we need to stay retired. Yeah. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what that means, because it's super important. There are three critical things every one of us has to understand, whether you do it on your own or whether you want to kind of spot check your advisor, or if you need to focus on someone that handles the retirement quotients, right? Because it is very different. Growing money is very different than maintaining it and actually distributing it over your life, your surviving spouse's life, your children's life, and if we're very fortunate and we save very well, even our grandkids and further on. That's dynasty planning. That's technically estate planning. So all of that is what a retirement advisor should be doing. Okay. But the biggest things, let's do the big three. Number one, you have to know your number. No, this is not about the amount of money that you've saved. Your number of what do you need to spend each and every year in retirement. We'll adjust it for inflation later, but what do you need to spend to enjoy being retired? That's it. What do you want to spend? Okay. Is it $80,000 a year? Is it $10,000 a month? It's kind of irrelevant to me how you think about it, but I kind of do things on a monthly basis because that's kind of how we pay our bills in this country. Most of it is monthly. So if the average person wants to say, John, I want $6,000 a month, fabulous. Now that we know how much you need, now our systems will adjust that for inflation, which is good. But the other thing we have to adjust for is, what about things that change? In the beginning of retirement is where I want most people to spend the most money. And if you talk to most advisors, they absolutely discourage that. They're like, oh my gosh, if you overspend in the beginning, you're going to run out of money. And I think that that's preposterous. I think that most of us, if we've done a great job of saving, we need to plan to overspend in the beginning. I call this front-loading retirement.
Okay.
Now, why do we do that? Because that is the youngest and the healthiest you will ever be over the course of retirement, chances are. Chances are, as we age, we're going to be a little bit more uncomfortable. We're going to be a little bit slower. Our knees aren't going to work as much. We're not going to be climbing the steps of Machu Picchu at age 82.
Right.
But could we potentially do it at age 66? Yeah. So if those are things we want to do on our front load retirement, that puts a completely different stress on a portfolio, which is why we got to know, where does the income come from? So number one, how much money do we want to spend every month? Number two, what is going to generate that spendable income for us? Many of us can either rely on a pension of some type or Social Security, because most people that don't have Social Security, they often have pensions. That's what allows them to have that switchover. So we can rely on that. The question is, what else can we rely on? A lot of people out there have been talking about annuities, some of it very negative, some of it very positive. To me, an annuity is just simply a tool. It's kind of like a personal pension plan. You put money in, you give it to an insurance company, and they say, okay, you give me $100,000. I'm going to give you $10,000 a year for as long as you live, or for the next 20 years, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so that can be a very attractive income source if you want certainty. And most people in retirement, that is one thing they want. They want some form of certainty that if they have these bills they have to pay, that something is coming in to pay for those, right?
Right.
So if we know our Social Security and it's not quite enough, we don't like annuities, or we don't have pensions, that's fine. But where is the rest of that money going to come from? Is it going to come from our market-based investments that could go up 50%, which is awesome? But frankly, the market is very expensive right now. It doesn't mean it's going to fall apart. Don't confuse what I'm saying, but it is very expensive. And if someone was retiring today and they said, John, I've been making 12, 13% a year on my money for the past several years, why can I only take out 3 or 4%? Well, because there will be a day in time where the market will not go up 13 or 14% that year. It could give us a negative 20 or negative 30%. And I don't want you changing your lifestyle or changing your retirement goals simply because the market decided to throw a tantrum on us. So we have to have some form of way to produce income. Now, should we use assets that have buffers or barriers? Maybe. Should we get them insured or guaranteed? Some of them. But the easiest way to figure out where our income is going to come from is by using buckets. Very, very, very simple. We basically have a bucket for what are we going to need over the next 2 to 3 years. That way, if the market does have a tantrum, as long as we have 2 or 3 years worth of income in a very liquid and unbelievably ultra conservative bucket, we should be in good shape. That is a good enough buffer period to withstand most market issues. Now, not for every period of time. Don't get me wrong. It's not a perfect situation, but that is just that first level. That is the now bucket, what we need over the next very short period of time. That middle bucket, this is the one that most people don't have. The middle bucket is truly meant to generate income, whether you're using bonds, whether you're using inflation-protected bonds, whether you're using indexed annuities, whether you're using anything in the world that can create an income stream. There is one caveat to that middle bucket, that income bucket. We cannot have too much of a hit on principal. It doesn't mean it has to be fully insured and guaranteed like a CD or something, but we have to have very limited or very low or no loss potential.
Okay.
So because of this, there end up being many asset classes that are just very attractive for this bucket. We want something that has some surety. We want something that can create income for us that we can spend. But the main thing is we do not want downside volatility. That's the big one. And the last bucket, the third bucket, is the growth bucket. Now, this is what almost everyone has. This is what all your mutual funds go into, all your exchange-traded funds, all your market-based assets, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, ETFs, SPY, QQQ, all that stuff goes in that later bucket. But the thing of it is, that later bucket, that's the one that's meant to take care of inflation, major emergency needs down the road, or frankly, longevity. That's what that bucket's for, to grow hopefully for when we need more money down the road. But most people do not have that middle bucket designed properly. That is utmost importance. So what Chin was saying is people don't know exactly how to get down that mountain. They don't know how to withdraw that money. The most important part of it is that once we know how much we need per month, and then we know how to generate that income, the last piece of the puzzle, and this is where almost everyone misses it, is it tax favored? Because how we are taxed is the difference in thinking we're going to get $100 and we can spend it, or we only get to spend $80, or in some of our situations, we only get to spend $60 of that 100 that comes in. So those are the three things we have to have when we're coming down the mountain in retirement. When we need to live off of what we've saved, number one, we have to know how much we need specifically today. We'll adjust that for inflation later. Number two, we have to know what is going to create that income that we can spend. It's either an asset class or a strategy, or it's in a bucket. Either way is fine, but we want to know what is going to generate that income. And lastly, is it going to be tax efficient? If we get those things right, not only will we be comfortable coming down the mountain, but we'll live to be able to tell the tale to everyone else that they need 2 Sherpas, not just one, 2.
There was this guy, John, he wrote into an advice column on marketwatch.com. He's 65 years old. He says he's been pulling out about 10% of his IRA to do Roth conversions. But the market continues to go up. It's been up over 20%. So his balance keeps going up along with it. And he is trying to get his money detaxed, but he feels like he's on a treadmill and can't get ahead of it. What would you say to this person?
Yeah, so what he is perceiving as a problem is actually a very positive result. It shows that his strategies are actually working, right? So I know, and it happens all the time. I talk about this all the time. It's like, John, I own all this NVIDIA, and we just converted 20% of our portfolio, but NVIDIA is up so much more that I feel like I'm treading water. But the guy, this is the perfect thing. So what we're doing, though, is we're actually moving money to go from a tax deferred account, often, if we're going to do a Roth conversion, into a tax free account. Now, we have to pay the taxes on that move. But if the account balance is still going up, that means that we've gotten growth. That's awesome. And at the same time, we no longer have a higher tax bill on that ticking tax bomb for that tax deferred account. So believe it or not, even though it feels like you're on a treadmill, the point is that is exactly proof that your strategy is working. We have a taxed asset. Yes, it's growing, but we've already offset the loss that we took from having that tax bill. At the same time, we have all the rest of those assets, assuming we invested it similarly in that Roth, hopefully growing at that same clip. So there's all kinds of ways, though, Heather, it can be structured. Should you take your least risky assets, your most stodgy assets, and convert those dollars, and so in your Roth, then you add risk? That is something that we consider all the time. Or the other way around, should you take the assets that have the most appreciation and just put those from your tax deferred account, convert those dollars, and get them in your Roth? Should you do it that way? We always do the math on this. Everyone's going to be different because everyone's income situation comes into factor if they're going to actually utilize those dollars down the road, or if they think it's going to be a gift to the next generation or their surviving spouse, and if they're going to take an income, right? If they're taking an income now from those assets, or if they're going to take it later down the road from a Roth. So those are those 3 important factors that we always want to talk to people about, because it is a great thing when the market keeps moving up when we do conversions. It doesn't seem like we're making any headway, but we absolutely are. It's proof that the strategies, if they happen this way over time, we make out like bandits in the long run.
What strategies will work for you? This is what John and his team are here to help you figure out. If you have these questions, give us a call, 502-317-0840. Let's set a time on the calendar for you to have your initial phone conversation with one of our advisors. 502-317-0840. You can also find us anytime, retirementsolutionradio.com. All right. The other thing that I think it's important to consider for this one gentleman, the example he threw out this question, how do I get ahead? I think it's interesting how he's talking about, well, I'm pulling 10% out of my IRA to Roth conversions every year. It's like, why 10%? How often do you see people come to you and they're like, well, I'm already Roth converting. How much? 10% a year? Why? I don't know. That happens, does it not?
Well, because a lot of the gurus, they write stuff like that. You need to convert, 5 to 7% or 5 to 10% or whatever the number is. Everyone, so this is a mathematical solution. This is one of those things where instead of using an arbitrary percentage, we want to go to the top of whatever tax bracket that we want to try to quote unquote game. Right. So the objective is that if we pay taxes now, this is a tax arbitrage play. When we're doing conversions, the objective is to not feel like we're getting ahead. The objective is to take assets out today and pay lower taxes now than we would in the future. That's really what it's all based on, right?
Okay.
So if you look at the current tax code, the way that it is written right now, we basically have 3 years left of this with probably the current administration. Probably. Okay. Who knows after that point in time what the tax code is going to do? But it is very difficult when you look at the debt of this country, very difficult to think that tax rates will be lower in the future, especially if you're a multimillionaire, right? If you've done an awesome job saving, you got a multi-million-dollar IRA, do we really think that the government in all of its infinite wisdom is going to allow us to go through without higher taxes when there's so many people who don't have multi-million dollar IRAs? As a matter of fact, the average American, the average amount in a retirement account today is less than $38,000. Now that's across all income areas. 38 grand is the average IRA balance when you look at the entire United States. So if you have multi-million-dollar IRAs, I think, unfortunately, it's wishful thinking that the tax rates will be lower in the future. Well, so when I'm looking at this, we want to exploit the marginal tax code.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to do. So if you're in the 22% bracket, what is the top of that 22% bracket that we can utilize? Or does it make more sense to go all the way up to the 24 bracket? Because if we do that, it gives us many more dollars that we can convert. Maybe it's $80,000 more to $140,000 more that we can convert and know that we will never pay more than that 24%. Because in my opinion, if we wanted to be a solvent country, Heather, we would just go back to the tax code that we had in the 1960s. If you looked at the 1960s, our country was substantially more solvent than today. But if we did that, the lowest tax bracket in 1960 to 1963 was 36%. That was the lowest.
What's the highest tax bracket as of right now?
The highest tax bracket now is less than 40%.
Come
it's
on.
38.9 or 38.6. Yeah. And the lowest was 36% in the 1960s.
And
so
have we ever seen debt at the level that we're at currently? I know
absolutely
I'm putting you on
not.
the spot.
If you look post-World War I, post-Revolutionary War, we had more debt as a percentage of our GDP, but we were an infancy country, right?
Right.
So if you look at it now, we have never had this much debt load when you look at GDP ever. Okay. And we've now eclipsed over 100% of our GDP as a debt service issue. So when you look at those numbers, it does not mean that the world is going to come to an end or the United States will no longer be a superpower, but it does mean that it may be harder for us to raise money by selling our debt to other nations. Now, if that happens, then it makes everything go up. And guys, inflation, we saw it in the last administration. Inflation can cause $20 items to go for $60 and $70. That can happen. We saw it with used cars a couple of years ago. So that would be a negative. So when we're looking at debt loads, I just honestly feel that the whole reason that we should have the conversation of doing conversions or asset shifting or trying to get our money into future lower tax obligation things is the government is not going to have an alternative. They're going to have to tax people who have money. Because I remember my granny saying, you can't squeeze blood from a turnip, meaning that people that have no money, you can't take more money from them. You can potentially give them a little less in the form of stipends or help or social programs, but you can't get any money. You can't extract money from them, right? So because of that, the people that do have money, those of us that have done an awesome job saving, we've got $500,000, $1 million, $3 million, $9 million, or we have a business that we want to sell in the future and hopefully generate millions of dollars. Those are probably going to have different tax consequences. So getting as much in that tax-free zone as we can, I think is going to be very important, right? I think that if we know anything about politics in this country, it ebbs and it flows. We had 4 years of the other administration. Now we've had 1 full year of this administration. They work very differently. But chances are, whether it's after this administration's term or the next one, it'll probably flip-flop back to the other side. It just does that over time. So we have to understand that tax rates are probably going to change. No one is going to really have the choice. The government will be forced to make the choice to make taxes higher. So that is why the impetus is on, great, we know that we can retire. We've got enough money. Now, how do we keep it in our own pockets and out of the government's? Right. That is this piece of the game.
At J. Hagan Capital, they are here to help you figure these things out. So if you have questions, give us a call, 502-317-0840. Let's set a time on the calendar for your initial phone conversation with one of our advisors. No fee, no obligation, no pressure, just a space to ask some questions and get some information. 502-317-0840 or visit us at retirementsolutionradio.com. And I think it's important also to recognize the work that you're doing at J. Hagan Capital and the difference between you and other financial advisory firms, because you might hear other financial advisors where you listen to radio, where you listen to podcasts saying, oh, you need to plan for taxes, but they might not have a solution for you. At J. Hagan Capital, you have in-house CPAs and in-house tax attorneys working on these things.
And we required that. And originally it was for me. It was because I needed the help.
You're like a small business owner and you're like, I need help. And then you're suddenly like, oh, everybody needs this help.
That's exactly how it worked. I was paying so many billable hours to all these firms to ask one-off questions. And so what I realized was that I need someone to bang this off of, because we want to be at the very forefront of when they're making law changes, because sometimes being early is exactly what you have to have for it to be worthwhile. So when we're doing this, I was paying these guys fortunes and I realized, why don't I just find quality people and bring them in-house? So we did exactly that. We brought in CPAs and tax attorneys and estate attorneys. Specifically, so I know we run my firm out of 9 different states, right? And I have other offices and other places and properties in other places. There are so many complications of being a small business owner who transacts business in other states. You have to pay their state taxes. You have to do withholding. What if I have clients in those areas? What if I have employees in those areas? What if I want to sell? Do I have to pay taxes in all these different states? All these things, I realized, oh my gosh, it's so important. And once I found that it's not a silver bullet or a magic potion or a magic wand they wave on stuff, it's how does it fit for what you want to accomplish, right? So what I started thinking is like, oh my gosh, financial planning should be done this way. We shouldn't just focus on, hey, you get this big old asset, or how do we grow to this big old asset? It should be, okay, awesome. How do we cultivate this in a way that not only can you live exactly the way you want, but we can preserve it against and away from the government so that your heirs can enjoy this and maybe even the next generation. It changes the entire life scale of what our life's work was, right? But we have to understand, how do we keep it away from the government, who's always needing more money, always wanting more money, and frankly, the other things out that are trying to waste it, right? So at the end of the day, if we've done an awesome job growing that money, now we want to protect it and preserve it for our life and, of course, then for the next generations.
Let's begin the conversation helping you understand about your plan, your money, your future. It's retirementsolutionshow.com, or just click on the links we've got posted in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with Jon Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with Jon and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to Jon's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital, LLC, NPN number 1882794.